Crush some cigar.
morning. Welcome. We're really excited for tonight. I think we'll have a lot of really great topics and questions. So I look forward to a really informative forum for us. My name is Linda Shapley. I'm with Colorado Community Media. You probably know me better as with the Arvada Press. Ann LaFood and I are your moderators tonight, and we're really excited to be here. We want to thank the following groups for helping bring us together tonight. The sponsors of this event are Colorado Community Media, the Ralston Valley Coalition, and the McIntyre Neighbors United. We'll start off first with a quick introduction of the candidates. First are candidates who are with the Jefferson County Commission, starting from the far left,
to them. Yeah.
by my left, Natalie Minton, Charlie Johnson, Rachel Zenziger. Then next we have our candidates for State House 27, Brianna Titone and Ed Cox. Then we have our candidate for State House 24, Lisa Ferre. And then finally, our two candidates for State Senate 19, Lindsay Daughtry and Sam Vandermeer.
So shall we all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to flag
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so here are the ground rules. We have two distinct types of topics. We'll be asking you questions that are grouped thematically. There are 5 different themes. Not everyone will answer each question. We'll let you know who's going to answer each question. All of you, though, have about a minute and a half to answer the question. And Phil has signs to help us stay on time, 15-second warning to stop, and we have the cowbell.
This is the this is
Can we hear
ground.
it, Mike? Can you give us a demo?
Oh yeah, penalty.
All right.
Oh, we need more cowbell.
More cowbell.
So when you hear that, please stop. The second type of question is going to be a lightning round. We're going to mix it up a little bit. We'd like a 1 or 2 sentence answer in 15 seconds. I know it's going to be hard. You can even do a yes or a no. So it'll be a rapid fire. Everybody will answer. And we'll ask the questions in a way so that you're not always the first person to answer the question. We're trying to keep the playing level. For the audience members, we're hoping to have time for questions at the end. You may have seen the note cards up front. Please go grab those, write down your questions, and pass them to the cowbell paddle group over here, and they'll sort them for us and pass them to Linda and me during this discussion. One last request, candidates, the sponsors of this forum had asked that you not mention your party affiliation until the end of the forum in your closing statement. And with that, let's get started.
All right, so we're going to start off this first subject about good governance and transparency. So the Colorado State Legislature had a very active spring and summer session, and the legislature passed bills that some critics claim limited transparency and undermined good governance. Others supported these bills because they make it easier for elected officials to use modern communication technology to do that. So our first question will be for the legislative candidates. So there was a change in the 2024 session in the open meetings law with SB 157, which exempted emails and texts between members of the General Assembly and curtailed rules regarding candidate meetings. We immediately saw this used during the special session, or as we were going into the special session, that barred news outlets from two caucus meetings where lawmakers discussed the prospect of a special session to reduce property taxes. So freedom of information advocates will likely look to amend this law in the next session. We'll start first with Brianna. Do you think Senate Bill 157 disrupts the proper balance of government transparency? And if so, would you support amending or repealing this rule? You have a minute and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we have these conversations about the open meetings laws, we realized that these laws were made a long time ago and didn't really align with a lot of the things that's kind of happened since then. This happens a lot with statutes where technology kind of gets ahead of where we are. I think that there were some good things that came out of 157. I see the points that a lot of people are making about having access and transparency. I think we need to have transparency and access in government. I think that another thing we need to think about a lot is how we can actually get some things done with our team, so to speak. And I think that most people would agree if a football team wasn't able to have a huddle before play, they probably would look pretty foolish out on the field trying to get things done. And I think that's something that we need to consider is that, we have a team and the other people have a team and we need to be able to communicate with each other. Is that going to be open all the time? It's a difficult answer. And I think that we'll have to have some more discussions about it in the future. Maybe we're not quite there, but I think we got a little bit.
Ed?
Thank you. I have some concerns around this legislation and now law. I understand that the law was on the books for a little over 50 years, but I think the importance behind the existing law that governs transparency in our legislature was very important and rings true today still. I find it highly ironic that this law was passed through the legislature in such short order during Sunshine Week, which is typically a week that is used to celebrate government transparency. I understand that when we elect our government officials, particularly those in the legislative branch, that there needs to be a certain level of discretion when conducting business with their peers. And there's a certain level of trust that a constituency puts on their elected official. With that said, I think the old adage of sunshine is the best disinfectant still rings true today. So I was disheartened by it. I understand that there needs to be some changes made moving forward, given the advances of certain communication technologies. But as it stands right now, there are fleeting methods of communication that make it really easy to conduct business in secret. And if I were to pick between striking deals behind closed doors, I would rather have it open to the public so that they can digest it and make educated decisions.
All right, my turn. Thank you, everyone. My name is Lisa Fry. I appreciate the question. I think what we learned is that a lot of antiquated policies need to be updated. So I appreciate that there was legislation looking at what are the new forms of technology that and forms of communication that are being used, and how do we have those guidance in place so we make sure our legislators are doing things appropriate to the law. With that being said, I don't feel like I have privacy at all in politics, and I feel that many people have to be open and transparent in this profession. So having something like Open Records Act that is still enforceable is what I look at, and I think we still have ways to make sure that all of our information is being published. Everyone is subject to Colorado Open Records Act. So while this bill adjusted some of the policies and updated some of the policies, we still have other mechanisms for transparency that is added on top of this legislation. So I think when we look holistically at transparency, it's not just this. I think there's other policies as well combined that give us a lot of transparency as it is right now. Lindsay?
Great, thank you. I think for me as a legislator going through this process, Prior to that bill passing, it was very confusing because there was a lawsuit which led to the bill. And while that was going through, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of great guidance for us as legislators because the statute that we were looking at to begin with was so antiquated and not up to what was going on in the present with Zooms and electronic communications. And so as a legislator, we were like, if I go get a coffee with another legislator, does that need to be publicly noticed? And then do I take notes? And then where is that posted? And so for us, we want to be transparent. We want to comply with the statutes and the law. So I think this was a great step forward for us. I'm always open to making laws that we pass better. But as an attorney especially, I realized that we needed some clarity, and that was the purpose and the intent with this bill that we're speaking of. So I was supportive of it because I do believe it did that. And we're always there to work further on that as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you. My name is Sam Vandermeer, and I got to say I have not been a senator yet, and so I've got a lot to learn. As far as Senate Bill 157 is concerned, I think we all expressed frustration with this last session that went on down there, where it just seemed like it was difficult to get the information out that we wanted to hear. Every family has a communication issue, and I can relate to the fact that I want to see transparency open. Every family operates better when they communicate. So I relate it to a family situation at this point, but I'm looking forward to being a senator down there and communicating not only with my party, but across the aisle. And I want to be a senator for all the people, not just my party. So a lot of communication is going to have to needs to go forward from here, and I need to learn a lot. So I'll admit to that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. This question is for the Board of County Commissioners for Jessica, and it relates to administrative call-ups. In 2022, the city of Arvada passed a call-up provision so that certain administrative land issues could be decided by elected officials rather than approved by county staff in the administrative process. Would you support a similar type of provision for the Jefferson County government? And let's start with Natalie.
Briefly researching the issue before it did come to this forum, it looked like it was shifting a decision from an elected representative body to a staff member, if my interpretation was correct.
It's the other way around.
The other way, apologies. So from the going to an elected then, I would support that. The staff within the government administration, although they may have the long experience beyond a elected cycle, at the end of the day, the voters need to be able to have that decision made by somebody who represents them. And if they do not fit the terms what the public would like, they have no recourse if it's a staff member doing that. So keeping these decisions, a zoning decision as an example, zoning change within the elected body is the proper area. We've seen actually too many of our areas of our government where decisions have been handed off to appointed boards and staff members. And when there are complaints, they say, well, just take it up with the elected body. Well, they didn't make it. So we need to keep as much of it as possible within the forum where the public is able to speak to it. And in the county's case, I would suggest that perhaps we shouldn't be having 9 a.m. meetings with these decisions. We should be having them at 6 or 7 p.m. when the public can attend.
Thank you. Charlie.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for inviting me tonight. I believe that the city has that authority to a degree. My hope would be that they could work together. Jefferson County commissioners sometimes can't work with the city councilors, and then sometimes we have legislature is pushing zoning issues on us for people that don't even reside in this area. So that's a big concern to me. I would be okay with their provisions to call up, but I'm not necessarily thinking that they should be overturning Jefferson County, who has the higher authority, if you ask me.
Thank you. Rachel?
Thank you very much for the question. You have to strike the right balance. Jefferson County is huge, and if all decisions were turned over to the county commissioners, they would have no time for any other type of county government. And some of the decision-making that happens at the administrative level is pretty technical. I have a background in education. I do not have a background in water retention or engineering or any of those things. So I think that we do have a really good board of adjustment that kind of takes the first pass in partnership and consultation with staff members. And so that's kind of like the first step. I do believe that there are some decisions, though, that do need to be called up to the elected level. And I think it needs to be the right balance.
All right, so the first thing, this is our first opportunity for you all to answer lightning round questions. They will not necessarily be involved with transparency or governance at this point. This is all just interesting things that we want to get your very quick response to. I'm going to start from my left all the way down to the right. And so we have 8 of these lightning round questions. So each of you will answer first one time. So anyway, so we'll start first with Natalie, and you will all answer this one question. Are you in favor of road diets?
No.
And, oh, I'm sorry, Charlie?
It would depend on each situation. I think each one has to be looked at individually. I'm not an expert in the street design. So if CDOT would recommend it to make it safer, then I'd be yes. So it would depend on each individual decision, to be honest with you.
Rachel?
Yes, if that makes sense.
Brianna?
Yeah, I'm in favor. If the safety is improved, then it makes sense in the situation.
I would have to take a look at it on a case-by-case basis to make sure that it makes sense for public safety and transportation.
If it helps with traffic and it helps with safety, then I would be supportive of it.
Absolutely, if it helps with road congestion and public safety, I'm supportive of that.
I would look at it on a case-by-case basis.
So the next question will go first to Charlie. Are you in favor of 15-minute cities?
No, I am not. I think the high density and the 15-minute city concept is destroying the look of Jefferson County.
Yep.
I've been here since 1995 and I barely recognize the place anymore.
Yes, if it makes sense. I think the most important thing is that our neighborhoods are connected. So regardless of what the density is, if they're not connected, then they're not very travelable or usable.
Brianna?
Yeah, I would say yes in the situations that make the most sense and is agreed upon by the people who are in it.
I have concerns with the state legislature promulgating zoning requirements down to local entities, and I think local governments are better suited to make these types of decisions than state legislators are.
It was interesting, on city council, we actually passed a land development code change to allow for pocket neighborhoods, so you can walk to a coffee shop if you wanted to. So the citizens of Arvada expressed that this is something that they want, and so I would be supportive of it.
I think it depends on the area, and you really need to get the input of the citizens and who this affects.
I would not be in favor of it. I grew up here in Arvada, and like Charlie, I can't recognize it anymore. I don't like warehousing people in these buildings that we see today.
All right. Next round, Rachel, we'll start.
I think Natalie get a bite of that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Natalie.
Thank you.
I apologize.
It's all right. Just because I have a lot of thoughts about this. So to me, the 15-minute cities is really playing into the state mandates, forcing density within the neighborhoods, regardless of the local decision. But those are tied together, and the overreach by the state is unacceptable.
Great, okay, now we'll go to Richard. Are you in favor of high-density activity centers, such as the Chatfield Activity Center?
So those are local decisions that will be best made by local entities, and I agree with Natalie, if this is not something that the state should have a say with regard to.
Yeah, I agree. I think these decisions are, not suitable for every place, and they should be made on a case-by-case basis by people who live in that area.
Same answer. I'd like to empower our local governments and municipalities to be able to make these decisions on our behalf, be it our elected officials, like those on the city council, make those decisions for us.
Same.
I'm also sticking with my last answer. It depends on the community and the input in the area.
I don't think it has anything to do with the Senate level, the legislature. I think it's something that needs to be handled down at the lower levels of government.
Anna?
High density, if it's a choice, that's fine, but we've seen where the state has continued to shove mandates down on neighborhoods, and again, inappropriate. So there's different levels, but the government interaction, I don't see it.
Charlie?
Yeah, same thing. We vote for transit. We do it in good faith. The next thing you know, we have high density housing in all the areas that we wanted trains and buses in. It's unfair, and it's unfair to push it on our local decision.
Thank you. All right, so next question for Brianna. Are you in favor of larger setbacks between industry and homes?
It should be local decisions that are made by people in that area. They should have an input with the local elected officials in that.
Consistent answer, it should be a local decision, not a state decision.
Again, local decision, I agree with colleagues up here, but I will say that I think there's variables to be considered, such as lighting, such as noise, and I think those are the things that need to be considered when you're looking at setbacks.
Again, I think it's a balancing issue. So, and I would agree with my folks up here that it's also something that's more better at a local issue.
That's a decision that needs to be made by the county commissioner, city council, and so forth. They wouldn't have anything to do with us at the Senate level.
Anna?
Agree, we're kind of, sorry, going over the same one here, but once again, the state is requiring certain goals on our community. The infrastructure is not set to do that. We have water concerns. Those are the conversations that are not important.
I don't think the setback is the real question. I think it's why we're mixing so much industrial with residential to begin with.
Yes, in some instances, I do think it's appropriate.
And our next question, for you, Ed, are you in favor of the nighttime closure of Lookout Mountain Road to motorists?
I understand that there may be some concerns about light pollution up there, but I think these decisions need to be happening at a local level with public input involved.
Well, I thought there was concerns of littering and danger and crime as well. So, if you can't be an adult and you cannot participate in our collective community the right way, then unfortunately some things get shut down.
I bike up there, so I love that area, but I think it's a balancing act between, safety and those sorts of concerns that were mentioned and the residents who live there and whether this would put further burdens on them.
I would not be in favor of closing it, but it's a lookout where you can see the city of Denver and take people up there, visitors to our area. It's just too valuable to shut it down.
I have concerns about closing a public road. Secondly, with the different safety issues that it presents by having a gated road on a exit point. I think it was the right, I do not believe it was right to close the road.
If you live in that community and at taxpayers' expense, you know how the gated community, I guess you're happy, but that was funded by taxpayers. That should be an open road to everybody. I'm not in favor of the closure of Lookout Mountain.
I think public roads should stay open to the public.
I think there was a reason, though they closed it, was for safety and people abusing the privilege of going up there. I'm sure it'll open back up when people will start to behave.
Right, we'll move on to Lisa. Are you in favor of heavy truck routes and either designated by the state or the county?
I think that there should be truck routes to get the items that we need in the community to the people, but we need to be very meticulous about what that route looks like and the impact that it has on the roads and how we frame that. So I think that we need it, but it's just how we go about it.
Yeah, I think that those are important, but again, it's a balancing act, and a lot of it's about safety and the wear and tear of the roads.
That's a zoning issue, and I don't think at the Senate level we would be dealing with that.
We are consumers and we like to buy products. We are going to need truck routes. Until drones can deliver the refrigerator, we are going to need these things. So I do think they are appropriate. Go local business.
I'm a truck driver. I teach truck driving. We design our routes and we actually stay away from that route. I think mixing, again, industrial and residential is a fine line. I don't think it belongs up there. And I don't think roads or streets are a privilege.
It's not a decision that it will ever come before the Board of County Commissioners.
I think that truck routes are appropriate where it makes sense for them to be in existence. Certain places are not. Road conditions need to be right. If those conditions are right, then it could be inappropriate.
I certainly think we need to take into consideration public safety when we're looking at trucking routes, but I just also want us to be mindful that these are people's jobs as well. It's not just the consuming side of things. We need to be taking a holistic look at this and people's livelihoods.
All right. Lindsay, for you, are you in favor of autonomous delivery vehicle and truck routes?
I think they offer the potential to improve efficiency, but again, I think we need to loop in residents and see what makes sense for the community.
No, I would not be in favor of that.
Evan?
Having spent 8 years on the RTD board, recognizing the last mile issues that we've got when we're looking at autonomous delivery vehicles and truck routes. Technology is moving that way, and I think it's going to provide a lot of benefits and efficiencies. But there are still safety concerns.
Yeah, as a truck driver, probably the only one up here. I want to keep those jobs as truck driving jobs. I won't stop technology. I know it's coming, but I saw my first battery-powered truck tractor trailer the other day. They brought it in and presented it to us, and it creates a lot of problems. They're a lot heavier than other trucks. And even the state patrol at the weigh stations don't know how to deal with them yet. Autonomous, I'm sure is going to get there. It's not there yet. And I'm certainly not a technology guy to speak on it, but.
I passed the law that created the framework for regulating autonomous vehicles in Colorado. I will tell you that we are not there yet, but we have a framework that is in place for when the technology catches up, and we're prepared to address the safety concerns.
I think this is an inevitable thing that's going to happen at some point, as long as it's done in a way that protects the people who are out there from these vehicles. It's something that we'll have to work around.
This is something that's going to be heavily vetted. It's something that's around the corner. The prospects of improving safety and efficiency are immense in my view. I'm sympathetic to truckers' perspectives here, but I'm also sympathetic to the number of people that die on the roads.
I would be in support of it, but I do think that we should do a pilot, see how it works in a smaller scale before we scale up, and it is inevitable. And so rather than fighting technology, working with it to improve the lives of our community is something I would be supportive of.
All right, and our last question is for Sam. If you had a magic wand, what is the one policy change you would make today?
Lower taxes, making it more affordable for our citizens here in the state of Colorado.
I would take the state definition of food to eliminate all taxes on food for home consumption and immediate consumption. I believe it's immoral to tax food, and that needs to change at the state level.
Can I clarify this question? I have a magic wand that can do anything.
It's only allowed to change policies.
Oh, I don't like how government gets involved too much with people, but I would force people to write a check to the government every month to see how much taxes they're actually paying and open people's eyes.
I would overturn the laws that were passed recently that preempted local control.
I would do something to help people who have HOAs settle disputes without having to go to court.
Comprehensive tax reform that gives counties, municipalities, and citizens awareness for the future. They have to make plans and they have to pay it. And I don't like that the legislature has to keep going back to the drawing board with a scalpel to make decisions when we can't.
I wrote this one down. Change structure of social programs to allow people to save up and jump from being on systems to self-sufficiency. I think so many times the programs we create keeps people in poverty and doesn't allow them to save up enough money to make that jump to get into their own home and to get off of those programs. So that's what I would change.
My background is in juvenile law, so I would love to see a way for us to have more placements for our foster and our juveniles who really need it in the state.
Great, thank you. That ends our lightning round one. There'll be one more.
Wow, you did great, by the way. That was fast and quick. Good job.
Yep.
Thank you for your meaningful answers. Really appreciate it. So now we're going to move on to the second topic. We're going to have a couple of questions related to sustainable development and the housing crisis. These sets of questions address or they're related to how the community would like to live in Jeffco, touching on high-density development, transportation, and the balance of development with the preservation of existing neighborhoods in the semi-rural areas in Jeffco. The first question is for the House candidates. It's related to high-density development. Senate Bill 84 was enacted this year, and it imposed a congestion impact fee of $2 to $3 per day on rental cars to raise funding for all rail projects, such as the Front Range, Passenger Rail, and Mountain Corridor projects. Just last week, CDOT held an open house about a potential new passenger rail station in Northwest Arvada or unincorporated Jefferson County that would utilize existing rail lines to provide service through Steamboat Springs to Craig. Do you support SB 184? And what is your local and statewide vision for future passenger rail service? In addition, do you believe that a new passenger station in Arvada creates a transit-oriented community that would then fall under the requirements of high density that was enacted with HB 1313? So it's a multi-part question. Do the best you can. Ed, I'm going to give you a second. We're starting with you, and you have a minute and a half.
So, just to make sure I understand the question correctly before we go, we're talking about SB 184?
That's correct.
Okay. So I understand the need and desire to expand multimodal transportation options, and I certainly feel the need to reduce congestion on our roadways. For too long, it seems like our planners and our elected officials are reacting to growth. They are not planning for growth. And I think it shows in our roads and our infrastructure. If I had my way, I would make sure that we focused on maintaining and improving our existing transportation infrastructure. I have concerns with some of these transit options as well as light rail, et cetera, because it demonstrably is proven that it absorbs a massive amount of the transportation budget while doing very little to alleviate congestion on our roads. I would like to focus on us maintaining and improving our existing infrastructure, making improvements to our existing roads. I live over in Candelas. I go on Indiana. It's a logjam every morning. I don't think rail opportunities are going to address any of those concerns. And so if I was in the legislature, I would prioritize improving and maintaining our existing transportation options.
Lisa.
Thank you. I love trains. I was on the Rocky Mountaineer. I don't know if any of you have done that. And I took 8 hours to Grand Junction, spent the night, and went to Moab. And I highly recommend it. It's great. But I got to see Colorado in a different light. You know, we didn't speed through 70 or sit in traffic on 70. We actually enjoyed the beautiful mountains that we love. So I think a lot of people love trains and would love to participate. With increased crashes, increased fatalities, increased road rage incidences, this is the time for us to lean into multimodal transportation. It's much nicer to sit on a train and read your book or scroll through your Instagram feed than be behind the wheel and have that road rage that people are starting to really peak out. So I think we should lean into developing that passenger rail line, and yes, it would be considered a transit-oriented community by the definitions that were set forth. And I think that there is some value in having diversity out west in the homes. You know, there's single-family homes everywhere out west, but a lot of people want to downsize and stay in those communities, and that's not an option when you don't have townhomes, you don't have condos, you don't have apartments. So I would support increasing the support to rail lines.
Yeah.
Well, I was an early adopter of the train station in Arvada. I started working on that 3 years ago to get Amtrak to go station there for the speed train specifically. Because nobody wants to go to Denver to go on the speed train. And a lot of people want to go ski and get on the speed train. Then this station idea kind of got adopted into the mountain rail. I think the mountain rail is a good idea. I think the mountain rail is not really possible unless we have a station to get people on the train outside of Denver, because nobody wants to go to Denver to get on the train. I think it's going to really help improve the conditions on the roads in the wintertime in particular. We're going to help reach our greenhouse gas reductions. We're going to make it safer for people. Maybe we can reduce some of the car insurance rates. People are staying off the roads more. And in terms of the transit-oriented communities, I don't think that the frequency of the train for it being a speed train or the mountain rail would be sufficient enough to make it a transit-oriented location. Is that right? Oh, yeah, I'm correct. So it would not force us to have to do those kinds of things. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think a lot of people in the community think it's a great idea. Let's go ski and let's stay off the roads and enjoy a little bit more time with our families.
This next question is for our Senate candidates. And we'll start with you, Sam. What is your position on HB 241152, which greatly altered local governance over accessory dwelling units? Should ADU decisions be relegated to local governments, or should the counties and cities have been more diligent in implementing and more accommodating ADU policies?
I'd have to think about that one, and study it. I'm not sure I have a position on it at this time, but, I would love to study it and see just what would work for our people. All I know is I am, for saving our people money and keeping them safe. So I want to reduce taxes, I want to get tough on crime and so forth, but as far as this particular bill is concerned, I'd have to study it.
Yes. One of the biggest issues that we try to tackle at the Capitol is housing. As someone who grew up in Colorado, my husband and I were just able to, buy our own house about 3 years ago. And we both have pretty well-paying professions, but we've seen the price of housing just skyrocket, which is sad, talking to a lot of constituents and folks around Colorado. So I was a yes on this bill. I think anything that we're doing that can increase affordability, increase access to housing at the state level, while maintaining the local control, is a great policy and something I am definitely for, because like myself who grew up here, I would love for, I got a 15-month-old baby, and so I would love to enact policies where it's easier for folks now and down the road to be able to afford to live in Colorado, because it's a wonderful place to live.
Thank you. This next question is for our county commissioner candidates, and Charlie, we'll start with you. This topic is about the balance of density versus the rural nature of the county. Many residents of Western Arvada and Jefferson want to retain the rural nature of their community, yet the county approves rezoning of higher density development and frequently. What is your position on balancing development versus preservation of the rural setting in Jefferson?
Thank you. Go. You cut me off.
Yeah.
Well, I do have access to the cowbell, but not to the mic.
It works now. I was trying to get the light back on. I apologize. Gotcha. I thought you hated my answer already. I haven't even spoke. So your question is relevant. I'd like to go back to the other question, because I think HB 1313 is relevant to the county commissioners. When legislature put the zoning things at the legislative level, and took it away from the county commissioners, you're telling people to vote on issues in Arvada that don't even live here. Why is somebody from Grand Junction developing my land zoning issue for residents in Arvada? So I think that's a big issue. I think if we should push back on 1313, get that repealed, and then your question will be a lot more relevant to where the county commissioners could come in and find that balance. Right now, I think high density housing is out of control. And again, I think that we vote for things like transportation, which sounds great, and then years later, we get another bill that forces us high density housing in a mile radius of where we live. So I don't think that's right. And I think we need to push to have county commissioners vote on these things, because we actually live here.
Thank you. Rachel.
So I also voted against 1313, and it's because it preempted local government. And it didn't actually apply to Grand Junction. They carved out most of the western and rural parts of Colorado, which is very strange for a state law, which is supposed to apply to the entire state. But instead, they just made it apply to the Front Range, and in particular to the Metro Denver area. And it did take away the authority of the commissioners to make the best decisions using the evidence and the local processes and the feedback of the residents, took those decisions out of our hands. So as far as the balance that we currently have here in Colorado and Jefferson County, I do believe that we need to be very careful, because we prioritize and we love the rural aspects of our county. The majority of our county, by the way, is rural, overwhelmingly. So
I do think that we need to be looking at more infill, as opposed to sprawl. I do think that we should be looking at, density where it makes sense, in particular around our transit stations. But unfortunately, much of that has just been taken away from the Board of County Commissioners by the state of Colorado.
And, yes, all of these different package pieces that we've kind of covered, this bill, they were all wrapped together last year in Senate Bill 213. And Senate Bill 213 had a rightly death at the last minute because it was a state mandated control. And what occurred this session is, instead of just giving a big old ugly sausage, because that's what the law can sometimes be, it was broken into these pieces and it slid through. And I think it really broke down. We talked about transparency. I wish we would have been able to talk about Senate Bill 157. I would have liked to, where these meetings between the government aren't open to the public. And that's what occurred with these discussions. You and I got to go into a committee room, but we didn't participate in the back room discussion where they were talking about our future and shoving things down our throat, reversing decisions, reversing voter decisions about local control. It has really gotten to the point of being offensive. And now it's taken to the point where, again, it used to be, let's put out a carrot to encourage density. And it went to, well, let's take a little stick to them to now encourage density. And now it's a club. That's what it is. That's my opinion. I feel pretty strongly on this one.
Thank you. Oh, it's time for another lightning round.
Good boy.
We're gonna start with Sam, and we're gonna go the other direction this time. So Natalie will answer last. All right. You did so well last time. I know you never will. So a quick question. So question number 1. Are you in favor of the CSU Fort Collins new BSL Level 2 bat research facility?
I think we should always be encouraging science, although we need to make sure that we are very safe about it.
Right, I think that we need research in life. Right? Nothing evolves as much as it can without that research. So as long as we're doing it in a safe manner and we have protocols and protections in place, I think it's fundamentally important for our well-being.
This type of research is going to happen whether it's in Fort Collins or not. I support conducting research within the state using our professionals, using our employees and our expertise. Of course, we need to make sure it's safe, and I'm sure they'll do a good job of that.
Baseball players need to hit more home runs. That research. No, we need to, I think research in science is always good, and we should encourage it here. I think Colorado is a great place for science research if it's done in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
No, I'm not in favor of it. I remember COVID and everything done in a proper, safe manner sounds good until it's not.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I think my hesitation stems from where we're going from medical research, improving our world, and all of a sudden money interests are involved in medical decision, and we lose medical choice.
Are you in favor of progressive property tax rates? Lindsay, we'll start with you.
Were you talking about House Bill 1004?
Yes, we are.
I heard that in Finance Committee and I voted against it because it couldn't be implemented. And just as important as good policy is good implementation.
I couldn't agree more with what she says. It's not just about policy, but it's about implementation. And if you pass a policy that can't be implemented well, then it's not good policy and we shouldn't support it.
I think it's bad policy. I don't support it. We did progressive tax in this country, and I don't think it went the right direction. I support flat tax.
If it can be implemented in the proper way at all, then I think it's something we should consider. But if it cannot, then we have to find another way.
It's currently prohibited in our state's constitution because it's a provision of Tabor.
No, absolutely not.
I'm going to say just covering progressive property tax with a means of value or a progressive income tax. No, both are contrary to the American dream.
And we'll start. Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
agree, I would not. I agree, I would not, vote for it.
Thank you. Lisa, we're starting with you. This question relates to the Gallagher Amendment. Are you in favor of reinstituting any portion of the Gallagher Amendment which shifts the tax burden back to homeowners from industrial and commercial?
No.
I support comprehensive tax reform that gives us the clarity we need and to know the futures that we hope to achieve by tweaking the tax code over and over and amending it repeatedly. We all have uncertainty and we don't know what to expect down the road. I think we need to look bigger than using a scalpel at the tax code every 2 years.
I don't think we should be looking back to Gallagher, which worked in the 80s. I think that we need to look at what we have in front of us and come up with a solution that may have some influence or inspiration, but we need something for today.
No.
I think we had more stability when we had it, but I believe that we should not have legislation pick and choosing which tax rates are which. I'm more of a flat tax person as well, and I think I am in favor of equality for everybody to pay the same amount of tax.
I do not want to go back to the Gallagher Amendment. We have our Taxpayers' Bill of Rights in Colorado, which allows government to grow by a formula that keeps it in line with the economy. That is the best way to keep a cap on our property taxes and increase housing affordability.
I agree. I would enforce the Tabor amendments to make for sure that our taxes on our homes and businesses are equally adjusted.
No. Thank you. All right, Ed, we're gonna start with you on this one, and this is a big change of topic, so brace yourself. Are you supportive of use of closed source AI and camera technology to aid wildfire detection?
Absolutely. Wildfires are an increasing problem in the West. There is AI technology that can detect smoke within seconds if used accordingly. Of course, we need to protect personally identifiable information, but that can be.
We definitely need to protect our citizens from wildfires, and if the AI technology complies with privacy, we should employ it to privacy.
I would say definitely, but we're gonna need some help from the federal government because certain spaces that are above us are actually regulated by the federal government.
I don't know enough about it, but if it'll help our wildfires, I'd be in favor of it, so long as it doesn't interfere with personal rights and our privacy.
If it's related to AI and third-party sources that will be accumulating data on the American public, where that may be, we need a lot more details before we're just openly accepting of those practices.
I would agree with Charlie and Natalie. I think, it's exciting technology, but if it's going to interfere with people's privacy, I would not go. But we need to look into it.
Spoiler alert, I may have a bill on this. Stay tuned. And I promise we'll get the privacy protections right.
I've spent over a decade in disaster response, starting with the Hyde Park fire, and most recently the Marshall fire. I have literal scars on my body from responding to fires. I couldn't be more supportive of anything that would help our firefighters.
Thank you. All right, starting with you, Pamela. Are you in favor of prohibiting 24/7 hours of operations for logistics distribution centers and industrial operators if the operator is within 500 feet of residences. Similar, and this is similar to legislation in California that was recently approved by the EPA.
I think there's room to talk about how we can mitigate a lot of the concerns that are happening around these facilities. There's technological advancements in the ways that these facilities can work that can limit that. I strongly encourage the use of them.
That is a very specific question. I think for a very specific case that may be confronting our communities. So let me give you a very vague answer. I think that generally speaking, the current zoning that is in place is appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate in all instances, and so therefore I would be open to mitigating and changing the rules.
I again would be on a case-by-case decision-making process on that. If you are referring to the McIntyre development, then I'd be a no.
This one's very hard. It's again, identified as a specific area, but this is a blanket question, and I would have to state that it would have to be, in this case, case by case, because we need to know title, who was there first, who's planned, who's invested.
I think this is a county commissioner or a city planning issue.
I think again, it's all about balance and about listening to everyone involved.
You know, I think it's true case by case basis, but I think the important part is what are the concerns that are being addressed, or what are the concerns of the community and how are they addressed and are they mitigated? Because I think that's the balance is how can we solve for the issues the community has, and if we can't, then maybe that's not the right thing to do there.
I would be deferential to local zoning authorities for things like this, and I certainly understand they need to look at these on a case-by-case basis when there's bad actors involved. But I would like to remind everyone that businesses, business owners, and the trucking community, they all pay the fuel tax too, and so they should have a right to use our public infrastructure.
Thank you. This, Rachel, we'll start with you next with this next question. Are you in favor of wildlife over/underpasses?
Yes, and I sponsored a bill for them and I funded them in our most recent budget. Increased the funding for them because they do protect motorists and they also protect the animals, and they do it in a way that is good for the environment as well.
I'd be okay with it if it's reasonable. Out on Highway 93, it almost looks like Jurassic Park going through there. There's so many signs and flashing signs about wildlife. So I think if it's reasonable, I'm all for it. I think it'll be good for safety for the motorists. Again, case by case.
I have to agree. This conversations came out even with our TD. Should we have the animals crossing 6th Avenue over a bridge? There's a lot of different specifics that are really, really needed to address and answer as a blanket.
I agree. It's a case-by-case basis, but I would leave it up to the Colorado Department of Transportation to make recommendations.
Yes, and if Rachel said she figured it out in the budget, I believe it.
That was actually going to be my point. You know, it's easy to say yes to things when you're not considering funding. When I look at the priority of things to fund, while I would be supportive of this, I think there are some other things that might take higher precedence in terms of funding.
I think these types of crossings, they're well studied. They've been put into place in different states. I know my home state, Utah, I moved here in 2019. My wife's from here. They use it very effectively. I know 2 seconds left. But the fact of the matter is we need to be looking at the costs to the public from these types of public safety accidents. They're very expensive and makes all of our insurance expensive.
Yeah, we definitely need to have these. It will help reduce our car insurance rates when we have these to reduce that impact. There's a road in Evergreen that has more elk hits than anywhere in the entire state. And that has a huge impact on communities and how much we pay for sure.
All right, Charlie, we'll start with you. We have 2 more questions left. Are you in favor of the use of aggregated cellular data to determine park, trail, or highway usage?
No,
Sorry, please repeat that one.
Are you in favor of the use of aggregated cellular data to determine park, trail, or highway usage?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
No, here also.
I think I'd have to learn a bit more about that.
I think if users opt in to allow for that data to be shared, then that would be helpful in decision makings and prioritizations of trials. But I think that they need to have the option to opt in to sharing that data for the trails.
I think if you're an avid trail user or a part of our park service, you know which trails are getting the highest traffic. I don't know.
This is usually anonymous data that's not attributed back to any one particular person. We do it every time we use our navigation service on the highway. It helps us to understand which ways to go and not go. This is going to help our parks people know what trails are being used and how to maintain them. So I think there's a lot of value in having that data.
I sponsored a bill for this, in particular along our major highways, like I-70, so that we could do better snow mitigation and anticipate accidents and make real changes to our transportation ways. But it was actually killed in committee and it didn't make it through, so sorry.
And we weren't writing these because we knew Rachel had drafted legislation on these topics. I just have to tell you, in full disclosure. So Natalie, we're going to start with you first. This is the last question in the lightning round. Name a person in the opposite party that you've worked with, and in one sentence, tell us why it mattered to you.
Senator John Kafalas. I did a lot of work with him on promoting open government, restoring the Colorado Open Records Act, reducing the cost to get public records. He's now county commissioner in Larimer County, and I still occasionally talk to him.
Well, obviously, I have not been down to the Capitol yet to work with the other side. All I can tell you is my life's experiences of trying to contact senators and your representatives is a very difficult thing to do, and I want to reverse that. I want to be available to my constituency.
Representative Ron Weinberg, who represents Loveland, where I grew up, we run a lot of bills together. And I always joke that I still know Loveland better than him because I actually I did live there longer than he has.
You know, I'm on city council right now for Arvada, and it's nonpartisan, and I love it. I don't have to worry about parties, and frankly, I'm a little nervous going into the state and having to navigate the party system. But I think with my background in social work, I can talk to pretty much anyone.
I think bipartisanship is extremely important, and while I haven't worked with the party opposite in the state legislature, I did in Washington, D.C. as a senior staffer for Senator Orrin Hatch. I drafted on his behalf the Geospatial Data Act, which was co-sponsored by Senator Mark Warner's office, and we got that bill signed into law in 2018.
Lots of bills to choose from. Mostly recently, I would say Matt Silver on the West Slope. We did a regulation on the funeral industry, which was much needed in lieu of so many tragedies that have happened. And we came up with a really good policy together.
I had a 100% bipartisan record down at the state legislature. I sponsored a bill with every single member of the Republican caucus, and my favorite, hands down, was Senator Barbara Kirkmeyer. We served together on the Joint Budget Committee, and we passed a bill to fully fund special education.
I'm a truck driver. I'm not a politician, so I have never worked with any of these people. I got in because I don't like what I'm seeing in Jefferson County, and I want to make a difference. And none of my fingerprints are on what you're seeing.
Thank you. Again, you did a great job. Thank you so much.
All right. All right, thanks so much. So next we're moving to a block where we're talking about infrastructure, roads, and trails, which we've had some of these questions already in the lightning round.
But, so the state and Jefferson County are facing a housing shortage, population growth, and that's driving development. Water is an increasingly precious resource. Impacts on traffic congestion and preservation of trails and open space are often pitted against it in the interest of development. So that's where this next set of questions will go. So this question is for our Senate candidates, and we'll start with you, Lindsay. Creating reservoirs has considerable trade-offs. For example, there's a plan to expand Bear Creek Lake by 22,000 acre feet, which eliminates 500 surface acres that's right now used for recreation. So what are your views to balance increased demand for water with plans for growth? And are there other options we should be considering?
I think water is just a really important issue for Colorado in general. That's something we hear about a lot. And I think that making sure that we're updating and spending the necessary amount of money that we need to update our infrastructure for water is also incredibly important. I think as far as Bear Creek specifically, I know a study was just released. I haven't had time to go through the study, but I know there's also a group of folks who live near there that are concerned about damage to their property. So I think using that example and going through a study first to really look into it, and I know it was a 3-year study, and then talking to residents is a good example of how to proceed. Because we have to, again, I'm all about balance, as you've heard a few times in my answers, but balancing the importance of having these resources with the folks who live near these affected areas.
I think we can agree that life does not exist without water, so water is very important. Not only for our well-being, but for recreation. So when you look at reservoirs and so forth, it's one of those issues that everybody realizes we need, but not in my backyard. It does take a lot of study, and it takes a lot of negotiations and a lot of understanding on the part of the public where these reservoirs need to go. But yes, we need to, if we're going to continue to grow, we need water. So.
This is for the county commissioner candidates. The state legislature passed HB 1313 this year, which requires local governments to approve high-density residential development near transportation hubs. However, limited water sources can trump the state's requirement. If a local jurisdiction says we don't have enough water, they don't have to comply. What are your views on the impact HB 1313 will have on development in Jeffco? And do you think additional water storage or reservoirs should be developed in western Jefferson County so that increased development can occur?
I think it's me.
Yes, Rachel goes first.
Thank you.
So the reason why local governments can opt out of that provision because of water is because of an amendment that I had added to that bill. Yes, you have to have enough water or you can't develop. So forcing these very strict density guidelines is going to be problematic, which is the reason why I opposed the bill, because they don't necessarily understand the specific requirements or the information that the local officials have on the ground. That said, we do have to plan for water. Any municipality worth its salt is going to make sure that it plans for a minimum of 50 years. Good planning goes beyond that to 100 years. I was supportive of the expansion of the Gross Reservoir so that we could provide enough water in our communities when I sat on the Arvada City Council. Unfortunately, that was hung up by a lawsuit for a number of years. We're just now getting to the point where the Gross Reservoir is able to move forward because of the legal hassles that were coming out of that situation. So I was not in favor of 1313, but I did try to improve it with that amendment.
Yes, obviously, I wasn't in favor of HB 1313 either. We had very little fingerprints down there. My party, I know we're not supposed to say who that party is, but I wish they had listened to you since they listened to you on so many other things. So there's that. I wish you had killed it. I have been through this water issue before personally. I grew up back in New York, and in New Jersey, they wanted to put a big dam structure on the Appalachian Mountain. The government came in, bought all the land, and moved people off the land. They lost all their homes under eminent domain, and years of tie-up of study after study. The Army Corps of Engineers determined that they had made a mistake. That land sits today empty, and all those people lost their homes. So yes, I believe we need water. But I would be very cautious in what I was agreeing to, because we need to do more studies. I think Bear Creek is beautiful. If we don't need the water, then I wouldn't be in favor of it, but you'd have to convince me otherwise, and I wouldn't just trust that, because I've seen it happen before.
No.
Thank you, Rachel, for adding that amendment and proposing. 1313 has so many other impacts just besides the water supply, the infrastructure itself, which is sewage. It's a lot of different factors within when we talk about infrastructure. And when I talked earlier about how the carrot to increase density is now became a stick and then became a club, this is the example of what we're talking about. The government down at the state capitol, specifically the governor, is very driven to put this demand on local government systems. And this is why Senate Bill 213 blew up in large part last night of the state legislature, year before last, this last one. The local governments expressed that they cannot handle this demand. And yet the state is just continuing to plod down this road. And when I talk about a stick or a club, it goes to the point where now they are actually withholding our tax money that is supposed to go back to our community for roads. That is being withheld from us unless we comply with these mandates. The whole principle is so flawed. I hope it will be addressed, but if you're in the next legislative session, it will actually just get more aggressive on taking over local control.
All right, thank you. Next question is for our House candidates, and we'll start with you, Lisa. And the topic's road safety. So motorists are increasingly tasked with sharing the road with other forms of transportation. Bike lanes are typically parallel to vehicle lanes and have little spacing. Are you in favor of buffered bicycle lanes and intersection bend outs for added safety for all? And if so, how would you help get this accomplished, and what roads or highways would be priority for your first term? And then as a follow-up, are you in favor of similar accommodations for equestrian communities as well?
Yeah, my uncle is an avid cyclist and got rocked by a van, and it was crazy. I mean, he's 5'2" and he got sent, and he luckily was fine, but there's a lot of people that aren't, and they're scared that we are so full of distracted drivers right now. It's just dangerous. So the idea that we would build a road with a bike lane without having those buffers doesn't make sense to me in the way that we are driving and the way that we are distracted and the way the data is showing the increase in crashes and fatalities. So I would be supportive of having those barriers if it's being developed, if roads are being developed. The challenge though are existing roads, and how do you build that out? Because you need more space, and it would cost so much money to change it. You'd have to buy properties, so it'd be very challenging. I would have to lean on the urban planners to really iron that out. For equestrian, I think I would be supportive of including them in the bike lanes, but I wonder if that's what they want. I would have to engage the equestrian community, because how does that look driving next to cars, and what's that impact? Is that what the equestrian community would want? So I would probably want to ask and engage through rigorous stakeholder engagement before confirming that.
So we need to be managing our roads for multiple use. Obviously, we live in Colorado. There are going to be a lot of bicyclists on the roads. It's part of our culture. And I also think, you know, if you drive around Arvada, you see a lot of people in the equestrian community. But what this illustrates to me is we need to be prioritizing our funds, our limited finite resources towards expanding existing roads, developing existing roads, rather than throwing them at very expensive light rail projects and other rail projects that eat up an enormous amount of the budget. I think we'd all like to see larger roads that have multiple lanes, given the increased congestion, the continued development, et cetera. I would prioritize state funding to go towards things that make sense. And I would start with roads and infrastructure, and I would use that money accordingly to help manage multiple use and ensure the public remains safe on our road systems.
Brianna.
We have a lot of people who are bicyclists in Jeffco and a lot of surrounding areas. And we need to make sure that we're making a safe environment for that. This is some people's livelihoods. I remember a few years ago in Boulder, during a race, someone was hit by a car and was killed during a race. That was with barriers and lane closures. These kinds of things are still happening. So if we aren't funding training projects to get people off of the roads, there's still people on the roads in large numbers putting threats to bicyclists' lives. So we need to do what we can, where we can, to make sure that we have those safe places to go. Where would I do that? I mean, I think Highway 93 could be a really great bike route if there was a safe shoulder and a safe way for bicyclists to go with that very fast traffic that's going on. And as far as the equestrian aspect, is a lot smaller community. It's still an important aspect of Jeffco, and we need to sort of find the happy place where we can find the places where that is possible. Land is always an issue. How do we find the right places and right land for that to happen? It's going to take some cooperation and collaboration.
This next question is for the county commissioner candidates. And it relates to trail systems. A well-connected trail system can provide off-road transit and economic benefits as well as recreation. This can reduce conflicts between motorized vehicles and pedestrians or other modes of transportation. Are you in favor of this approach, that is a connected or integrated trail system? And how could you guide the development and preservation of integrated trail systems? And we'll start with Natalie.
Well, connected trails do make sense. How do we expand these? Well, one of the programs that I would like to see initiated with Jefferson County is a property tax volunteer credit system. That's a little bit complex. Gets into reducing your property taxes in a voluntary system, putting in hours. So how do we expand that? I would look that to be one of the ideal systems to utilize the property tax credit program, which has been initiated in other counties, but for some mystery has not been initiated in Jeffco. That would be like one of the first things I would like to work on as a county commissioner, because it would have benefits even far beyond the trails. It would be open space. It would be a great program, and I have great ideas on this we can talk about later. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yes, I'd be in favor of them, but like Ed said, I agree with Ed. Our roads come first. You know, bike lanes and paths and all that other stuff is fantastic. But you can always tell whatever state you come from to get into Colorado. You can tell when you get back to Colorado because the roads are in disrepair. Jefferson County is no different. We have a limited amount of resources. We need to spend those on the roads where most of us taxpayers spend our money. Not all of us ride bikes. I was fit at one time and could ride a bike, but those days might be gone. I don't know about you guys. I look at the audience. You're all taxpayers. I don't know how you benefit from bike lanes, but I think our priorities are a little mixed up. I think once we have our roads fixed, we can look at bike lanes. these paths that you talk about that connect, have you ever been down these paths at night? Not only are they, they're dark and they're dangerous, there's a lot of homeless out there. They sound great until after dark. So if you push for these things, we better maintain them. We better ask our local police and our sheriff's office to make sure that they're safe for our community to use.
Rachel.
I think that living here in Jefferson County, our trail system and the interconnections of our trail system and our open space system is kind of the crown jewel of Jefferson County. The history of it goes back pretty far. It was established back in 1972, and it was a collaboration with the League of Women Voters, actually, that developed Jeffco Open Space. And so we have a separate tax that goes to support those open space. And when you have trails that are interacting with our open spaces, I think it's really important that we have a really good, robust system that is connected, because I think everybody really enjoys opportunities and out in the outdoors, especially in Jefferson County. I think that we can do some things to prioritize and to make sure that we're not paving over those open trails. We could emphasize greater, stronger zoning regulations. We could work with developers to set aside land for open space parks and greenbelts. I think that we could offer incentives for conservation easements on private land. I think that we could work with prioritizing acquisitions by the county for local land trusts in order to open up new trail opportunities. And finally, I think that we need to encourage urban infill and redevelopment within our existing communities so that we can protect those open spaces and trails. Thank you.
All right, so we're moving on to another subject on property taxes and government finance. So it's essentially, we're going to some pocketbook issues. So since before the primary elections, Colorado Community Media has participated in a project that's pretty unusual. It's called the Voter Voices Survey. And so we've joined with a number of news organizations from around the state to survey what issues are top of mind with Colorado residents, and essentially it's asking that question of what do you want to hear from people who want your vote. So we learned that from so far 6,000 participants to the survey, that Coloradans are obviously concerned about the cost of living. So, and that includes the cost of housing, rents, insurance, property taxes, and everyday items such as gas and groceries. So if elected, and this question is for the Senate candidates, we'll start with you, Lindsay. If elected, what actions can you take at your level of government to address these concerns?
Yeah, I think a good place to start is with what we did a couple weeks ago with special session. I think what happened in that bipartisan bill is that we cut property taxes for residents and businesses by about $255 million. And that was a compromise bill. We were there because there were some ballot initiatives on the ballot that really would have hurt our schools mainly, and a lot of other necessary services. And so I was proud of the work that we did in special session. I think good governance is finding compromise. It's working across the aisle. And I think I just wanted to, a lot of people and constituents have had questions about special session. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out there and clarify that that's something that we've done. Since that bill passed, I've actually, there's been quite a few businesses that have reached out to me, business owners in Arvada, thanking us for the relief that we provided. And so I think that's just one instance of working together in a bipartisan fashion, listening to the folks and our constituents and really, really trying our best at the Capitol to come up with a solution.
Well, I would question why we had to have a special session to do what should have been done in the regular session. But what we've got to do is, yes, the economy is number one on everybody's mind. The cost of living with groceries and just the taxes and so forth. And that's a legislative issue. That is something that we can control. And one of the slogans that I have for my campaign is saving you money and keeping you safe. So one of the things that I intend to do as a legislator is go down and look at all of the budgets that we have to deal with and see what we can do to streamline some of those. Maybe we need to even put some of these agencies, combine them. There's, as an entrepreneur that did 3 startups of businesses in my life and took those businesses, one of them around the world. I know budgets. I know how to look at how to take a budget and make for sure that the goals are met and ask and make for sure that those that are in charge are held accountable. So we can do a lot in terms of getting our economy going here in Colorado.
Thank you. The next question is for the House candidates, and we will start with Brianna. It's a similar question. Property taxes have risen dramatically, and the passage of the deal that Lindsay just described limited the property tax rate, but would not backfill local districts for any lost revenue. What do you see as the largest effects of this deal, and if elected, would you take action to help blunt those effects?
This was something I was really concerned about with the bill in the special session. Mostly because special districts in general are not going to have a lot of that backfill relief, and fire districts are going to be impacted probably the most. If they don't have the resources down the line, if we don't do something to fix this, they won't be able to respond fast enough. They won't have the resources. They won't be able to pay the staff. They won't be able to do the services. That could impact our insurance rates. We are dealing with a lot of fire situations. We want to make sure that our fire departments are prepared with the best equipment and the best resources that they can to protect our homes and our property and our lives. So I will be working on a policy to try to alleviate some of that. And I'm also working on another policy on insurance, because insurance rates have been going way up, despite a lot of work that's been done, a lot of investment that's been done in the state to try to alleviate some of that fire concern, and working with the Division of Insurance to come up with some ways to get the insurance companies to reduce their risk, reduce the homeowner's risk, and save everyone a little bit of money.
I do have some serious concerns with how our legislature is handling tax policy. It seems like we have to keep going back to the drawing board and reinventing the wheel as we're reacting to the situation on the ground. What folks have been experiencing in this state is increased burdens, not only at a tax level, but they're feeling the burdens when they go to the grocery store, when they go to fill up. It's broad-based. But one of the key points that I would like to make is we're so focused on impacts to government revenue. And I fully recognize that this special session did put undue burdens on municipalities, school districts, and other community entities. And they don't have the certainty they need to make the plans that they need to plan for to maintain their properties. But going back to my point, there's 2 sides of this equation. There's government revenue and there's government expenditures. Government expenditures out of the general fund has gone up 110% since 2019. It's doubled. Population growth has gone up 2.1%. Now I'd ask each of you, if you feel like you're getting twice the amount of service from your government than you were just in 2019, and I'd wage to guess that the answer is no. And so when we do if we're so lucky to engage in comprehensive tax reform, I would look at government expenditures as part of the equation. If we're asking all of our citizens to tighten their belts during these trying times, maybe we should be asking the same of our government.
Can I begin on this real quickly? Because there was, in the framing of the question, there was actually an element that wasn't true. The new bill that was passed actually has a significant amount of state backfill for school districts, to the tune of approximately $271 million. So it wasn't as if there was no government backfill. In fact, there was, in particular, because we decoupled school finance from the rest of the property tax
scheme that was embedded into the program. And also, there were certain fire districts, ambulance districts, and water districts that will also receive almost nearly 100% backfill. It just doesn't backfill all special governments.
Thank you. That is a very important point, and you're right, and we acknowledge that. So thank you very much for making sure the information is 100% accurate tonight. Lisa.
She stole my minute and a half, so I have to answer right.
How is your uncle doing now?
He's a fiery Argentinian man, so nothing can keep him down. So one of the things that I want to touch on, I've worked in government and I've worked in nonprofits, and I have the pleasure of seeing how the sausage is made in some of the bureaucratic systems that we always talk about, specifically in Medicaid. So when we're looking holistically at our state general fund, so much of that goes to Medicaid. So much of that, the cost of prescriptions is so high. There's hospital admissions, millions and millions of dollars. There's a lot of ways that we can adjust the way we implement our system, specifically towards Medicaid, and I will wrap this into property tax, I promise. But I really want to highlight that if a third of our money is going to Medicaid, and there's ways that we can improve and save millions of dollars with Medicaid, you can reallocate those millions of dollars over to help alleviate the burden of our local government and of our homeowners in terms of property tax. So I think that we need to look holistically at where all of the money is going and how we can improve services and implementation of programs to save that money and bring it over to some of the other areas that need some love.
So our next question actually is talking about metro districts, which has come up a couple of times already tonight. So after exposés in the Colorado Sun and Denver Post, the state legislature passed legislation to curb abuses by metropolitan districts and HOAs that led to home foreclosures over small amounts of unpaid fees. In 2024, the legislature passed 2 bills to correct some, but not all, of the issues with these metro districts and HOAs. And this question is for the Senate candidates, and we'll start with you, Sam. If elected, what would you take further steps to regulate metro districts or HOAs?
No, I wouldn't. And the reason being is I believe it comes down to a personal choice for the people that are buying their homes. When I bought my home, one of the first questions because I built my home. When I looked at the lot, one of the first questions I said, is there an HOA in this subdivision? They said, no. I said, I'll buy the lot no matter what it costs. Because I want nothing to do with that, and that's just a choice. So when you buy a home, you know whether it's in an HOA or not. And sometimes you just get what you pay for. And sometimes we all make decisions that we would rather we didn't make, but there's always ways out of them. So no, HOAs, I don't know why people would buy in an HOA situation anyway.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, with limiting housing options, not everyone has a choice to buy the big lot and spend an unlimited amount of money to not live in an HOA or a certain community, unfortunately, with their housing as it is. The other thing I would say about what we've passed and moving forward with metro districts and HOAs, when I'm talking to constituents about issues both with metro districts and HOAs, a huge issue is transparency. And I know that was one of the first questions. We all talked about wanting to have more transparency. And so I think a lot of the solutions here are, to be quite frank, transparency solutions. Knowing where that money is going, knowing how those votes are taken, I think would really, really help to clarify things for folks and help everyone move forward in that space.
So we have a similar question for the county commissioners, and we'll start with Charlie, and we'll go to Rachel and then Natalie. Would you support new rules, given the concerns and the action that's been taken to correct these abuses that were revealed by journalists in the state with metro districts and HOAs. Would you support new rules to guide approval of your approval of new metro districts? And rules to provide oversight of the existing metro districts to resolve some of the issues that were raised?
I mean, it's a very broad question. I would have to look at it. I understand the metro districts that provide different services, have to make an adjustment in taxes. I get all that. I always hesitate on broad sweeping legislation. 9 words that you never want to hear from the government, and I'm here to help. And I usually stick by that motto. So I would have to look at it, but that's my thought on it. I would have to look at each one individually.
So I passed a bill in 2023 on the transparency of metro districts. Did you know that last year, 87% of new construction, new homes were built in a metro district? 87% of the construction in our state occurred in a metro district. So why did I pass the bill? Absolutely, we needed more transparency around the way that those metro districts are governed. We needed more transparency in the way that they conducted their elections. We needed more transparency in the way that they produced their financial information for their membership. In addition to that, we felt that the maximum mill levy that may be imposed for the payment of those general obligation indebtedness, as determined by the Board of County Commissioners of each county that is approving that service or that plan or the governing body, needs to be at the table when these decisions are made. So that was honestly the point of the bill, was making sure that they were conducting themselves appropriately, because they're a very useful tool. The majority of new construction takes place in them, and we need to make sure that we're curbing them so that they're acting appropriately. Nana?
Definitely need more oversight of special districts. As I watch both cities and counties approve the formation of special districts, while that oversight is there in the first year, it seems to disappear in the following years. Here's a great example. When the special district is formed, you have the developers at the table. They are the eligible voters. If they want to waive all property tax caps for the future, forever, they can do that. These are 3 developers. It might be down in Greenwood Village with property out here. When residents move into that, they have forever given up those taxpayer protections. How do we change something like that? Number one, we as a community are used to being able to vote on city measures and state measures, things that were generated by a citizen petition. Meaning we didn't have to depend on the government. The citizens went out, got the signatures, put it on the ballot. With special districts, which include metropolitan districts, we do not have those rights. We are totally dependent on whether it's a board of developers or a elected body to control our tax rates. So if we want more accountability, limits on the amount of taxes that can be collected, the debt issues that have been talked about, foreclosures or liens based upon fees, these things still need work.
So I think we're going to move on to the next block that we have, which is about essentially civil discourse and voter participation in decision making. So over recent years, the issue of civility in public discourse has assumed center stage, and voter participation in decision making is also something that's a hot button issue. This question is for the county commission candidates. Last year, a private consultant was retained to rewrite the land use codes and transportation manuals for Jefferson County. For months, this effort, which was called Together JEFCO, collected community input on how to update land use codes. But fast forward to now, and the project has been delayed. The private consultant was replaced with a law firm. Rachel, we'll start with you. What will you do to ensure that the community's input into the development of land use codes, especially for light industrial zones, is incorporated into the work? And recalling our conversation here on transparency, how will you keep residents informed?
The number one reason why I voted against Senate Bill 213, as been referenced a couple of times by Natalie, is because it elevated those land use decisions to the state level and it cut out local control, and it essentially eliminated any kind of public participation. It was going to advance those decisions to an unelected board at the state level that would be managed through the Division of Housing and Local Government, where they don't currently do any type of regulatory work. So I prioritize those decisions. I think involving the public is extremely important. Maybe it's because I started off in local government as a member of the Arvada City Council. I believe that unfortunately this Together Jeffco plan is pretty advanced in the shaping of it. I think they're already in their third and final phase, and it will more than likely be put together before any of us end up on the Jefferson County Board of Commission. So if it turns out that that plan in any way impacts citizens' ability to be a part of the stakeholding process around land use, then I will actively work to fix it.
Natalie, we'll go to you next.
Well, there are experts in the field that had some serious concerns about some of the contracts with consultants and perhaps some misuse of money. Now we're talking about a zoning issue here versus, say, a ballot issue. But the further that it gets away from the community and those who are directly responsible and should answer to us as citizens, be hearing our input, the more we're dealing with somebody who's just dealing with it as a job. That's their 8 to 5 job. They go to a community meeting, they take the survey, they plug it into the computer, they report. Now, their expertise, yes, there should be consideration for that. But I'm just going to go back to if we look through the county's register and how much work, or any government, frankly, we are handing out to consultants without a clear understanding of the return on these benefits. There's a lot of questions that are raised there. I'm going to say with the Together Jeffco, honestly, I did not know that it got handed from the consultant, which I met with personally, over to legal representation. And I'm actually quite surprised to hear that because I've been following the county business now for multiple years. If that's the case, I'd like more explanation about that. I'd also like a little more input for, I hope this comes in after we are elected, because the wildland urban interface has a lot of questions too.
Charlie?
So that's the big question. How do we get people more engaged? Well, we've been saying that forever. So that's at every local, up to the state, up to the federal level. People have to be involved. And thank you guys for coming out tonight. I'll give you an example though. We talked about firms that are hired to do these studies. We spent $360,000 on a firm here to talk about the Tabor tax refunds. County didn't need to spend that money. We already knew. We voted on it twice. So sometimes it's just a good idea if you want to know what the taxpayers want. Just listen to the taxpayers. This year again, they're going to have it on the ballots. Natalie and I both went down to the county commissioners to testify against putting this on the ballot because guess what, folks? We've already voted that down. 3 people put it on the ballot. So be careful who you're voting in for county commissioner because that's the power they have. That is now on the ballot this year. So if you want your tax refunds, you better vote no on it.
All right, last question, and this is to our Senate candidates. We'll start with you, Sam. So this goes back to the voter voices survey that we did. So residents are also concerned, and this is actually their number one concern, that about challenges to our democracy and the erosion of effective governance, given the increase in partisanship and the decline in civic discourse and the shocking proliferation of mis and disinformation. So if elected, what would you do to promote respectful discourse, balanced stewardship, and a bipartisan solutions-oriented approach to problem solving?
Well, you hear all the time, democracy's on trial. Democracy's on trial. folks, the truth of the matter is we do not have a democracy. As a matter of fact, I'd like to read to you Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, which says, "The United States shall guarantee to every state of this union a republican form of government." And when you say the Pledge of Allegiance, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and it doesn't say unto the democratic society for which it stands. So first of all, we have a republic, not a democracy. As far as what it's going to take to get the people's support behind our government, we need truth. We need transparency in our government. And I think that's one of my first priorities that I will be doing as a senator.
Thank you for the question. This job is very hard. The last 4 years have been tough. And, when I was first elected 4 years ago, I expected a certain sort of decorum at the Capitol, and unfortunately, that's not what I have seen a lot. I don't know if it's my legal background or what, but when I walk into a courtroom or when I get to walk into the Capitol every day, which is an incredible building, I have such a deep respect for our history and the folks who came before us, and the fact that when we leave, people aren't going to remember us, but what we need to instill in the people coming after us is a respect for what we are doing in that building. I have knocked thousands of doors in my time, 2 primaries, 2 tough elections. And every time I talk to someone at the door, what I realize is that we are human beings first. And I guarantee you, 99% of the time, we have more in common than different. And that is how I run my policy at the Capitol. That is how I run legislation. I think that we have got to get back to seeing each other as human beings and not on one side of the aisle or the other. And I will continue to keep doing that in the Senate. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Now we have a few questions from the audience. Audience, thank you for listening closely and asking these questions. We think they'll probably be open questions unless Mike directs you. So the man in charge of the cowbell is known as my spot, and please he's compiled the questions for you.
All right, well, thanks. Yeah, these are questions from the audience. There's 3 that kind of hit the same point, so I'm trying to consolidate for time. And if we can't get to any, I would ask that if the candidates could answer these, if we could post the answers, or maybe answer the person who asked this question to make sure everybody was heard tonight. But first, I had to kind of look at this one. We talked about multimodal transportation. This is something that we were thinking about as well as a potential topic for a question. Multimodal in mass transit sounds very good when we're considering getting people off the roads and what have you. But I was reading about the zero fare for cleaner air, and there was a report that was put out where the crime also went up. It was assault by about 22%, and there was some things about theft and what have you going up about 60%. So trying to balance it out, this person asked in that spirit, how would you protect the people traveling on multimodal transportation and mass transit, considering mass transit problems? They mentioned New York as well, and what would be your ideas about crime prevention on mass transit transportation? And given the fact that now some of this mass transit might be a little further out, towards Steamboat, Yampa, Kremlin, how can we look at that? Open, whoever wants to take that.
I think if you speak about crime and what's going on in Jefferson County, I think you have to look at where it starts. This is not the epicenter, but this is a big reason why we're seeing what's going on, and it's the elephant in the room, and it's our illegal immigration system. We have imported a lot of bad people here in Colorado, and we have some people that have worked in state legislatures that signed open border policies and defund the police. And that sounded real nice. And when you ran into the microphones and said that, but now we're paying the price for that. So that's some of the crime you're seeing. As county commissioner, There's things that we're limited in what we can do. I would push ordinances to push back on things that I saw when I lived in New York about aggressive panhandling, public drugness, and people, we see them every day when we're coming down Colfax. I mean, you can't hide it. We see it. So I think it's something that we have to look at, tackle it honestly, and see if we can push back some of the policies that have been forced upon us at the state level. HB 1313 that took the county power away from us has also pushed a lot of problems on us that we can't solve, and that's one of them, and I think we should be talking about it.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to look at this question?
I would agree with Charlie. We need to get tough on crime, and that's one of the issues that I'm running on. I'm in favor of restoring the death penalty. I believe we need to get more seamless participation between our police and ICE so that we can deport these illegal immigrants that are causing a lot of our problems. And so, yes, we need to get tough on crime.
All right, Rachel and then Natalie about that. Is one want to try? Oh, Lisa, you jump into? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
All right.
Thank you. Having worked with migrants and refugees, I've personally pulled Ukrainians out of war zones that are fleeing, and I think we have crafted a narrative of crime, and that data doesn't line up. Migrants don't want to be in the trenches of law enforcement. So that's just a data point that's wrong. But when we look at crime, I just met with our judge at the city today about this. It is overwhelmingly homeless that are committing crime. And the struggle that we're seeing is when we put them in jail and then they parole or they leave, they just repeat and repeat. And I think we need to look at how do we intervene when they go to jail, they serve their time. How do we get them to become entrenched in some supportive programs so they don't commit those crimes? I think that what we're looking at is we just put them back on the street and then they commit crimes again. So how do we get them to break that cycle? Starts with mental health services. If we can get them stabilized, get them on medication, I think there's a lot of room for supporting them to transition away from that lifestyle crime.
So as a parent, and I thought about would I take the bus or would I take a train with my children, safety is absolutely a consideration. If it's not convenient, you're not going to take the bus. If it's not safe, you're not going to take the bus. If it doesn't take you to where you need to go, you're not going to take the bus or the train. So this is really within the sphere of our regional transit district. And so from a county commission or from a state legislative perspective, what we need to be doing is partnering. We need to be working with our transit authorities and our transit agencies to say, how can we collectively work together in order to address this problem? So if there are problems that are happening in our transit stations within the municipalities, how can the municipalities be partnering with RTD on addressing those issues? If they're occurring in unincorporated areas of Jefferson County, how can Jefferson County be coming to the table and working collaboratively with our partners to be able to address this problem? Because I don't think RTD is going to be able to do it all by themselves.
Thanks. I believe Natalie also wanted to answer.
I especially want to speak of this because I served 8 years as RTD board director, and the free fares, there is no free. There is no free. So when we do have those periods of time where the free fares is in place, the taxpayers pay through sales tax. You pay on everything you buy, toilet paper, toothpaste, etc., on and on. You are paying for that service. When we have free fares, that means we have folks just jumping on the board. Don't have an intent to go from A to B. They're just staying on the train, and that can now these days include fentanyl and a variety of different other activities that really are not welcoming to or does not encourage a lot of regular travel. I can get an example out at Jeffco. We've got 2 porta potties at the end of the line at the Jefferson County Government Center. Those 2 porta potties are paid for by the city of Golden. Jefferson County taxpayers pay for maintenance on these toilets. These toilets have burned down 3 times in the last several months. If you go inside, you're gonna see needles. When I got on the board, we started seeing more and more needles along the west line, and typical process would be call staff, they'll come out and do a hazmat, pick it up. I got tired of it, I just gotta, hear this, but staff didn't like it. One of these dog do rapes, and I'd go out and just box up the needles and take them to safe storage. So free fares, I have not seen where we're getting the benefits that one would expect.
Okay, it looks like Ed also wants to jump in on this.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different points, since we've kind of delved into the arena of public safety at large. I'll start with the micro first. Of course, when we're looking at intermodal transportation, transit, et cetera, we have to take into consideration the baggage that comes along with it, which is more than just the extreme budgetary requirements and the strain that it puts on the system. But on public safety at the macro level of the state, we could be doing a lot better. I routinely see rankings where Colorado is in the bottom 40 of the 50 states in terms of public safety, all surrounded by states geographically that are far safer than Colorado. We could be doing better, but we've been enacting policies that have been promulgating this problem, exacerbating the problem, and we need to be taking a look at policies and saying, okay, what did we do that made this worse? And start supporting our law enforcement on the ground, investing in public safety, and making sure that people feel safe in their homes. I'll just add this. I opened a business in January of 2020. 3 months after I opened the business in Western Arvada, I had 17 bullets shot through the front windows of my gym that I had opened. This was during the COVID closure. So fortunately, no one was there. But I didn't think moving from Washington, D.C., I would get a drive-by shooting in the suburbs of Arvada. So we had a lot of work to do on public safety, and I want to be a part of that solution.
Can I get a follow-up real quick?
Don't see why not.
Okay, so Denver's on track to spend $150 million on a homeless problem that was caused in essence by state legislatures who signed to open our borders. The HB 191124, HB 231100, and I'm sure, Rachel, you signed great bills. Those two are not among them. When you defunded our police department and made it impossible for our ICE or for our local law enforcement, and I was in law enforcement, to work with ICE agents, it compelled the problem, and that's what we're seeing today. If anybody in this audience doesn't see what I'm seeing out there, I don't know where you live, because I'd like to know.
Okay, there was another question that came in about, kind of dovetails into what Ed was talking about as well. Regarding mass shootings, Colorado, as we all know, has had several horrific mass shootings. What can be done to reduce the potential for more of these mass shootings? That was an audience question. Who would like to pick that one up?
I'll just start. I know that this is an extremely heated issue when it comes to the Second Amendment, and we've got every public official from the bottom to the top debating this issue. Meanwhile, in my view, we need to be providing additional resources to our public schools so that we can ensure that our children are safe. In my opinion, one of the most important functions of any society or any government, however big or small, as a species, we should be protecting our young first. And so while we're going to sit around and wait for people way up above us in the federal government, even at the state government, to debate the highly toxic issue of the Second Amendment, and I'm an advocate of the Second Amendment. I think there are significant benefits to it. But I do want to say that in the meantime, can we at least ensure that we protect our children, starting with having school resource officers at each of our schools? They do much more than just responding to incidences. They can help ensure that doors are closed, the perimeter is secure, and there are more eyes on the ground. And if I get to the state legislature, that will be one of my top priorities, is ramping up public safety at our schools.
Lindsay.
Yeah, I just want to mention Jeffco actually has a training facility, one of the only in the country, where they bring in other officers and school resource officers to train specifically for these situations. And I think being proactive, as Jeffco has been, is an example of how we are taking this seriously. I believe we can have a Second Amendment and still have gun safety legislation. And we've run so many bills at the Capitol where we have had the support of responsible gun owners with this legislation, because this is something that everyone cares about. I have a 15-month-old, Lisa's got a 13-month-old, and so this is close to our heart, and it's certainly something that we're working on at the Capitol every year to improve on, and something that our constituents are always emailing or phoning in, and I think we're doing a good job at the Capitol in this issue.
Anyone else want to jump in on this? Okay, we're coming up. I apologize for other audience questions right now. It's 8:52. We promised to be done by 9. So we have closing statements, and I'm going to let Linda and Ann take that back up. Okay. And if you guys can promise, I do have more questions. If you want, we can get those questions out and get them answered. To our respect.
Thanks so much for everyone today. Essentially, we're going to wrap up with your closing statements, and we'll set them forth with just, I guess, we'll start with just the basic question of, what drove you to run for the office that you're running for? And then we will start, I think, I don't know which side you want to start with.
I'll start.
We'll start with Sam, and then we'll go that way, so, all right.
Well, what drove me to run?
And we'll give you, I'm sorry, what, minute and a half?
Is that, you want to do it that way?
Minute and
Okay,
a half.
sorry.
All right.
All right, not 12 minutes, sorry.
What drove me to run? Well, I joined the Navy at the age of 17 years of age. I served my country as a youngster. Did 2 tours in Vietnam. And if I learned anything from that experience, it was that politicians will play games with your life. Politicians tend to want you to look up to them instead of them looking up to you. As an entrepreneur through all my life, running businesses and so forth, I experienced what it's like to have regulations on your back that's holding your business back from being able to move forward. And so I look at the American dream, and I'm concerned about it for my children and grandchildren, which, by the way, I have my cheering section here tonight. I want to give that American dream back to our children. I would also like to thank you for the opportunity of being here tonight and being able to express our sentiments in regard to all of these questions that have been asked. I have 2 goals as a senator, saving you money and keeping you safe. And I will do that by reducing taxes and the size of our state government. And I will protect Tabor with every bone in my body. So I will also pass laws to toughen our penalties and restore cash bail and deport non-citizens who commit crimes. But anyway, if you like the path that Colorado's on with its higher taxes, we all know the definition of insanity, don't we?
Thanks so much for having me and for being here. As you heard, I grew up here. I grew up in Loveland, have been went out of state for undergrad, but had to come back to Colorado and got my law degree here. Now I'm raising my family here. I have a 15-month-old baby. And throughout my lifetime, I remember when you could go to the mountains on a Friday and get up there in an hour and a half, right? And when housing was affordable. And I just want to do everything I can, even though we're in a tough situation, to bring those types of things back. I believe I have the experience necessary. I've been doing my job in the State House for 4 years. I was the chair of the Health Committee on Judiciary, Appropriations, and Finance. I'm an attorney. A lot of people think that's not a great talking point. There are only about 6 attorneys in the State House, and I'll be one of 3 in the State Senate, and the only woman. And I think that's important, that when we're passing laws, we have a few attorneys at the State House. As you heard, I believe in compromise, bipartisanship, and that people have more in common than difference, and that's how I run my policy at the state capitol as well. So thank you again for having me.
You know, I struggle with the idea of being a politician, if I'm being honest with you. It doesn't pay well, you have no privacy, it's big hours, you know, it doesn't sound fun on paper, and especially with the political climate. So if I'm being honest, I struggle thinking about what it's like being a politician. But just like Sam, I served in the military 4 years as a police officer. I became a social worker. I did long-term care, Medicaid, elderly, blind, disabled. I did over a decade in disaster response. My core is that of a humanitarian, someone that wants to serve. And, you know, for better or for worse, I think that's important to have as a legislator. I think it's important for someone who served in the trenches, literally and metaphorically, someone that knows the demographics of the policies we're trying to make for those people. Someone that served on city council. I think it's so important to have people with real life experiences from a vast array of areas. So that's why I'm running. You know, I love that you all came out here and you're civically engaged and we've had such a really healthy debate. It's not always going to be like that, and that's going to be tough. But I think it's important to have good, ethical, value-based people running for office, and so that's why I'm running.
So I'm an economics major. Economics has been my love. I'm also a student of public policy. I worked in the United States Senate as a senior staffer for Senator Orrin Hatch for the remainder of his final term, and I had the privilege of helping him get several bills signed into law. Now, you'd think I'd know better after seeing how the sausage was made, and I know every politician says this. I truly didn't have any expectation that I would ever run myself or be so crazy to do so. But I moved to Colorado in 2019. As I mentioned earlier, my wife is from an Arvada native, but we wanted to return to Western culture and Western way of life and raise our kids out here. I have 3 kids who are under the age of 6. So I think that's what prompted me the most, was knowing that they're going to grow up in a state. And if the cost of living issues that we have continue, if housing affordability continues to be unattainable, I want it to be their decision to remain in the state in which they grew up, in which they have family. I don't want it to be an economic decision, you know, in where they feel compelled to leave the state to go somewhere else that they can better afford. And so I thought, you know what? If not me, then who? So I'm going to run for office, and I'm going to do my best to make this an affordable state, a safe state, and one that we can be proud of.
I never thought I would actually ever run for office. It was one of the farthest things from my mind. But I started service to my community as a volunteer firefighter back in New York, where I grew up at age 16. I volunteered my time, put myself in a dangerous position with really no reward. And I was proud and happy to do that service. When I got out here to Colorado, I went to go visit my state rep, and at the Capitol, he didn't come out from the floor to talk to me. And I thought that was a little off-putting. Why would you not come out to talk to your constituent? I wanted to raise the bar. I wanted to make sure that people felt like they were represented, whether we're the same party or not the same party. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that I'm going to listen to the concerns of people. I'm going to try to act in the best way that, with the data that I have, to make the decisions that are right for Colorado. I'm a scientist, I'm a geologist. I worked in mining. I've been doing a lot of different work. I have a lot of tolerance for stress and discomfort, and that's perfect for the Capitol because we have to deal with that a lot. And this gray hair is a lot to do with the work that we do, but this is something that, you know, I'm a seasoned person. I want to continue to do this work because it's really important. And whether we agree on everything or not, I'm going to represent you the best way that I can.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming out and participating in this, not only just the candidates, but the audience as well. This has been really great, and I wish we did this more often. Some of you may not know my professional background. I'm an educator. I'll lifelong teacher, and I have an extensive background in school finance. I live here in Arvada with my husband and my 2 college-age children who have flown the coop. They are off at college right now, and I'm enjoying my empty nest. I do have a long history of public service. I started off as a teacher, as you heard. I also served on the Arvada City Council, and then I am wrapping up my final 9th year at the state legislature as a state senator. And I really enjoyed my time as a lawmaker, but local government is where it's at. It is my passion. I became the defender of local government when I was down at the Capitol, and that's what I hope to do as your county commissioner. A couple of years ago, when I ran my first campaign, I ran on issues. I ran on the 3 E's. I talked about education, the economy, and the elderly. And I don't think there's anything wrong with running on issues, but I believe that at this point in time, I'm running on values. I'm running on collaboration, commitment, and courage. Those are the qualities that I believe I possess, that I demonstrated during my time down at the Capitol, and that I will bring with me to the Colorado to the government.
Hi guys, my name is Charlie Johnson, and I've never run for anything in my life. I am not a career politician, I'm a truck driver. I'm a a retired law enforcement officer, and currently I teach tractor trailer driving in Wheat Ridge to veterans to give them a new job opportunity to re-enter the workforce. So I'm pretty proud of that. I moved here in 1995. I fell in love with Colorado and my wife, and we raised our 1 son here who graduated college last year and is working in the Arvada area. People are asking why run? I got in because I'm really sad what Jefferson County has become. And again, if you live here and you've lived here for an extensive amount of time and you're happy with the way things are, don't vote for me. But if you want to see change, I want to represent the working people of Jefferson County. I'm here to make sure that we push back on the illegal immigration problem that's been forced upon us, that's costing us a lot of money. It's going to bankrupt Denver, it's going to bankrupt Jefferson County. I'm running on a crime issue because I see it everywhere. They can say it's not there, guess what, it is. I'd like to fully fund our Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and make sure they have qualified immunity. And as a lot of other candidates up here, I want to make sure that our Tabor is fully funded. I'm here for the working people, and I want to make sure that our working class starts getting some tax relief.
Also, thank you to all of you for joining us tonight in the exchange. My background is 20 plus years involved with small business. And I don't see on our county commissioner, the 3 commissioners at this point in time, that they have the business background to understand the economic background of our community. What is a county commissioner supposed to do? Well, the county is an extension of the state. And in the same way, the county commissioner should be down there at the state capitol fighting for you. But many of you don't have time to go down and keep an eye on 650 bills that slips through in a very quick amount of time. And during the last week of the session, late April, beginning of May, God help us. What's going to come through? County commissioner is a full-time position. My job, my role stems from the volunteer work that I've done for 2 to 3 decades, protecting citizens, educating them on how to get involved with the civic engagement process. For me, the county commissioner position is great because it is part business role, part legislative. At the end of the day, what you're going down there to do is fight for citizens who don't have the patience, the time, the willingness, whatever it may be, to go down and fight for limited taxes, property rights, respecting zoning issues. I hope to go down there and do that for you.
Well, that concludes our forum. We are so fortunate to have all of you running to serve us. We know it's a sacrifice. Your qualifications, your values, your policy perspectives have been so wonderful for us to get to know more about and to get to know you a little better. And we just so appreciate you making the time to come to our community tonight. So thank you very much, and thank you to the audience for your questions.
So we got some questions we need to ask.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah.